I guess I knew there was alien stuff in Craglorn. I just forgot. And you know what we do when we see alien stuff.
What?
We gotta mess with it.
Show them who they mess with. Skill issue.
Hello my fellow Tamriel adventurers. Today I'm in Craglorn with Sharp as Night and we're seeing what kind of trouble we can get into.
What are we up to today?
We're going to be messing with alien ruins, poking our noses into abandoned mines and fighting off the dreaded Ankara wherever we find them. I'm doing all this with a new Warden build that uses a set from the Infinite Archive. This build is a PvE damage dealer designed primarily for the 4-player dungeons or entry-level trials content. Like all the builds I give you, this is going to be able to clear all of that stuff and more. So with the introduction out of the way, let's get on with today's video, Eagle's Cry.
Let's get it done.
Let's go ahead and look at the character sheet. My Warden is an Orc. Orcs are a good damage dealer race with bonuses to health, stamina, and weapon and spell damage. They also heal themselves as they do damage and have bonuses to sprint speed and a cost reduction to that. If you're curious about which races are the best stamina DPS races, I'll put the tier list up. Don't force yourself to play one of the top races if you don't want to though. Play the race you want to play. Racial bonuses aren't the determining factor for success as a damage dealer. My buff food I'm using is lava foot soup and salt rice. This gives me stamina and stamina recovery. On some characters this can leave me a little light on health, and if I'm going to continue to use that setup I'll adjust my health with armor glyphs. I'm using the Thief Mundus Stone for extra critical chance, and that's the best Mundus for group content. At the top of the sheet you can see I've got all 64 points in stamina, and that's typical for a stamina DPS. The only builds I have that use a different allocation are for PvP. I have 19,000 points of health and 29,000 points of stamina. I like to be at a minimum of 20,000 points of health, but I typically don't change that for the videos. For builds that I'm running on a regular basis, I'll adjust that upward slightly. You guys can adjust your health to whatever number you're comfortable with. These videos are guides only, nothing is set in stone. Make the changes you need to so the build works for you. Stamina recovery is at a comfortable 1,500 points. Unbuffed weapon damage and crit are at 4,600 and 36%. This build, like most, relies on potions of weapon power, so those go up in combat. Penetration on the sheet is only at 2,000, but I use a source of major breach, and when I'm in a group that's going to be increased by other players, primarily the tank. I don't actually have 17,000 points of resistance. I have some buffs that are specific to Craglorn Overland. Normally I'm squishier than that, around 11,000. Alright Sharp, that finishes the character sheet, so let's get out there and see what we can find.
I'll do my best to let you know if we pass something worth looting or collecting. Always stuns me how often people leave perfectly good resources just lying around, especially if you can use it to craft something useful, like poison.
Well, a Nirncrux mine is definitely a resource we can make use of, but we're going to have to take care of these trolls first.
I guess we could do that.
Let's make this quick.
Now there's a resource, treasure. Well, that went pretty well, but I want to take a look at my skills before we head out. This is a 2-bar setup in case I didn't mention that already, and I'll start on the back bar, which is a great sword. Before the first punch gets thrown, I want to activate the Warden's Bull Netch. This is a big help to sustain, and it also removes any negative effects on me once every 5 seconds. If there are no negative effects, it increases my damage by 5%. Well, most of the time in PvE, I'm not going to have a negative effect on me, so this is basically free damage. This is a flex spot though, and some other things I like to run here include the Lotus Blossom or Resolving Vigor when I feel like I need extra healing. I think in a lot of clips in the video I'm actually running Resolving Vigor. The next skill I'm going to use is the Warden skill Deep Fissure. This skill does damage to enemies in the direction I'm facing, and it's important to be mindful of that. In addition to its powerful damage, Deep Fissure applies both major and minor breach to enemies it hits. That's 9,000 points off the armor of whatever I'm fighting. Deep Fissure may be the best skill in the Warden's kit. Next I'm going to use the Arctic Blast skill, which has an initial burst of damage and then damage over time. If no enemy is caught in the initial burst, I'll get a sizable heal. If an enemy is hit in that initial blast, I won't get a heal. I'm using this as my main healing skill most of the time, which can be tricky. That's why I have some alternative skills for the slot the Bull Netch is in. I'll try to gauge the difficulty of whatever content I'm doing and slot the appropriate skill, giving up a little damage if necessary. Now I'm going to use the two-handed skill Stampede. This gap closer increases my weapon damage if the sword has the infused trait and a weapon damage glyph. It does this by placing a ground AoE that does damage over time to enemies caught in the area. As long as an enemy remains in that area, my weapon damage will be increased by the glyph on my sword as it procs repeatedly. After Stampede, I use the Scribe skill Bloody Burst. My custom version of the Soul Burst Grimoire does instant bleed damage over time, and gives me the minor courage buff. If you haven't done any scribing yet, go ahead and slot the two-handed skill Carve here. There's one more skill on this bar, and that's my ultimate, the Wild Guardian, or simply, the Bear. The Bear does great bleed damage to enemies, and periodically I can use a high damage attack called Guardian Savagery. My ultimate skill will glow down on my skill bar when that attack is ready, and I simply hit the button whenever I see that glow. Did I mention that the Bear does 100% more damage to enemies under 25% health, and that my critical damage is increased by 4% just for slotting it thanks to the Advanced Species passive? If I'm not running the Bear, I end up leaving a ton of damage on the table, so I'm always going to use this in PvE. Alright, that's it for the two-handed bar. Let's go ahead and look at the other bar, which is dual-wield daggers. The first skill I'm going to use on this bar is Deadly Cloak, and that comes from the dual-wield skill line. This protective cloak of spitting razors gives me major evasion, reducing the damage I take from area effects by 20%. It also does continual damage to nearby enemies during its 20-second duration. I like having this first on this bar because it doesn't require a target to activate, so if I've had to break off for any reason, I can activate this as I'm closing the range. The next skill I use is Barb Trap from the Fighters Guild, and I have to be close for this one because I need to put it right at my enemy's feet. Barb Trap does bleed damage over time and gives me the minor force buff. I have to have this buff to critical damage in every damage dealer build, and this is a traditional way to get it. There are other ways to get minor force now, but the fact that Barb Trap buffs my weapon damage just for slotting it can make replacements seem less effective. Alright, next I'm going to use the Warden skill, Growing Swarm. These Fetcher flies affect the target and nearby enemies with bleed damage. They also cause the initial target to take 5% more damage because of minor vulnerability. Now with all of my dots up and running, I'm simply going to use my spammable attack 10 times. That attack is the Warden skill, Cutting Dive. This Cliff Racer attacks doing instant bleed damage and bleed damage over time. You've seen that this build has a lot of bleed damage, and Wardens are a class where it pays off to lean into bleed damage. That's why my Scribe skill is configured as Bloody Burst. Okay, there are just a couple more things that I want to mention here. If while I'm using my spammable, the Wild Guardian's high damage attack becomes ready, I'm going to use it. Anytime that attack is ready, I use it. I have the Bird of Prey skill slotted because it gives me minor berserk while I'm on this bar, and it increases critical damage because it's an animal companion skill. Also, if I need a burst of speed, I can hit that button and get major expedition for 6 seconds. Finally, the last skill, Wild Guardian, is slotted on this bar too because it has to be on both bars if I don't want the bear to disappear when I bar swap. That's it for skills. I got a sample fight next with my favorite punching bag. Looking at the combat metrics results, the Warden did 62,000 points of damage per second, and that's enough to get through any dungeon in the game. I'm excited for console players that are going to be getting add-ons soon. When they do, they'll have access to things like combat metrics. At the top of the chart, you can see Cutting Dive led the way, and you can see multiple sources of bleed damage here, with that being one of them. This gives me a lot of damage from the hemorrhaging status effect. Shield is up there too, with a contribution of a couple thousand points, and there are more status effects that are cut off further down the page. Eagle's Mark is up near the top, and that's the proc I'm getting from the Warden class set, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You can see the proc from my Selene monster set too, so that won't be a surprise when I talk about gear. Okay, let's continue on.
There is a ritual that can consecrate this ground for a time and keep the Ankara from rising, but you must protect me while I perform it.
Got your back. Out of there!
The ritual is complete. Thank you. I don't know how long it will hold, but the Ankara will not be able to rise in this place, for now.
I'll never stop saying it. Repair your gear, pay someone, or get a kit, and do it yourself. If you get caught somewhere with broken gear, I'm not gonna be happy.
Ha! I knew it. I knew you couldn't get through a video without bringing up the gear. But you're right, we should do a gear check. On my front bar, I have two Ares Cry daggers. Ares Cry is a 5-piece Warden-only set from the Infinite Archive. This set causes an eagle to attack my target every 3 seconds for 12 seconds and causes my animal companion abilities to do 10% more damage. If you can do one arc in the archive, you can get this set. It may take a little while, but it's doable. Both daggers are in the charge trait, which helps ramp up my status effects. The main hand has a poison glyph and the offhand has a fire glyph. On my back bar, I have a Maelstrom's Perfected Greatsword, and that comes from the arena of the same name. This is in the Infused trait, which is always the trait I'll use on my back bar, and that helps the weapon damage glyph on the sword maximize my damage. I already referenced this when I talked about the Stampede skill, because that procs the glyph regardless of which bar I'm on, provided an enemy is caught in the AoE from Stampede. If you don't have the Maelstrom sword, you can run Ares Cry here and just let that be active on both bars. You saw in the demo fight that I'm wearing the Selene monster set, and this is a strong set on melee heavy builds. Selene comes from Selene's Web, which is a fairly easy dungeon, so pick that up if you don't already have it. My other 5-piece set is the crafted set, Order's Wrath. This is still the best crafted set in the game, so make this or have someone make it for you. I'm wearing all medium armor in the Divine's trait with stamina glyphs. Jewelry is Bloodthirsty, which is the best trait for PvE damage dealers. The glyphs are weapon damage. Alright, that's it for gear. Let's look at the champion points. In the blue champion points I have Wrathful Strikes, Master at Arms, Fighting Finesse, and Deadly Aim. No Thaumaturge, and that's because this Warden build relies heavily on single target direct damage. Okay, that's a wrap for the build. Sharp, what do you think?
I think you're good at what you do, and with me, you're even better.
Well said, brother. We're going to find out what happened to your memories. I can't imagine not having any memory of friends or family. Speaking of family, my brother's supposed to be in Craglorn. He's working as an armorer for one of the big caravan outfits. Well guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed today's Warden build, Eagle's Cry. If you did, help me out with the algorithm by hitting the like button. And if you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. There's a fashion show and a fight at the end if you want to put up with my extremely average game skills. It's not an overwhelmingly difficult fight, just more Craglorn stuff, but stick around for that if you want to see it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and enjoy your adventures in Tamriel.
See? Just outside. The fell beast I told you about. Let me restore these wards before it notices what we're doing. Keep these creatures away from me while I restore the ancient wards!
Get him!
Ward is sealed once more. Stay alert. The other 3 summoning circles are still active. Stay alert. We aren't finished yet.
Get him!
You weren't kidding, were you? Me neither.
That's right. Make them pay.
So far, so good. But we aren't done yet. More of these creatures could appear at any moment. Just keep them away from me a while longer. Keep these creatures away from me while I restore the ancient wards!
Impressive.
Keep him alive.
Should have been more prepared.
ward remains, and then the prisons will be sealed again. Do not falter. Keep these creatures away from me while I restore the ancient wards. Well done! With the wards restored, those creatures should trouble us no more. Take a moment to... Wait! It's aware of our presence. The fell beast approaches!
Focus! Watch it! I can't pick you up!
Well, I can't believe he found us all the way out here. Sharp, I'd like you to meet my brother. Uncanny, isn't it?